Coming up in all angles, weeks of campaigning.
Already parish can now see where success is not a marketing campaign, but a real possibility.
I am that same Peter who stands before you today and who will lead a renewed PNP to victory.
Now it's time. Peter faces Peter in the PNP's poll. Will the party rise?
You know you have a good candidate when males want to be like him and females want to date him. I have a good candidate for the next leader of the People's National Party.
Or go one PNP?
There is only one Peter. There is only the first Peter. Peter Phillips.
And when the polls close, what's next for the Peters and the party? Thank you so much for joining us once again for All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson Miller, and as always, a very special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. Well, as you heard there, Saturday is going to be the big day, the election that will see who will assume the presidency of the People's National Party going forward. So that's it for our program today. And joining us in studio, we have with us Senator Donna Scott Motley. She's a member of the One PNP campaign team. Just before we go to her, though, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's my apologies, Senator. In fact, let's come straight to you. A press conference earlier today saw One PNP, Dr. Peter Phillips' campaign raising concerns about vote buying by the Rise United campaign. Is this something that the campaign actually has proof of?
Well, we have had numerous reports about vote buying. I mean, everywhere you go, you are told about offers that have been made, things that are being done to induce the delegates to support the Rise United campaign. Have I seen it done myself? No. Have I heard about it persistently and consistently?
So what happens now? Is there going to be an official complaint made by the campaign?
Well, from my perspective, I don't make a decision such as that, but I would not make an official complaint.
Why not?
We have an election which is taking place on Saturday. The die has been cast. The purpose of the press conference today was not to raise that as an issue. It actually came about because Lisa Hanna had had several calls from her own constituency where all the delegates are supporting the One PNP. And they were complaining or reporting that there had been a very prominent member of the Rise campaign team who had been visiting their homes and making offers to them, leaving an envelope with money.
But Senator, what we heard described at that press conference, if true, would be out and out corruption. It would be something that's unlawful.
I gather, and you know I'm very cautious about things that I have no knowledge of. Do forgive me, it is my legal training. I gather that there are persons who have signed affidavits attesting to that.
So in fact,
and a decision will have to be made as to how that is dealt with. For my own part, I would focus on September 7th. After the elections are over, my main concern is not with making reports, but with uniting the party. And I think that regardless of how one terms it, whether in legal terms or moral terms, that has to be the emphasis for the party.
Except though, doesn't these very allegations affect any real chance of uniting the party, given the seriousness, as I've said, of the allegations, the fact that it goes to the very heart of a democratic process, and the fact that it suggests a corrupt process, and say for argument's sake, Peter Bunting wins. the suggestions and the allegations would then have tainted that win and tainted the party by association.
That is a chance which the perpetrators have to take.
And which your campaign team has also taken by putting it out there.
We put it out there, but if you speak to the delegates, as I have been doing, meeting with them, really enjoying the interaction with them, it's coming from them.
Which brings me back to the point you were making, though, because you were saying on September 8th, it'll have to be about uniting the party.
It will have to be.
Because in the wake of the previous leadership contest, the Peter Phillips, Portia Simpson Miller, and the kind of rift that created in the party, a lot of people were very hesitant about seeing another leadership campaign.
I was one of those who, I spoke to Comrade Bunting about it when he declared it. I reminded him that even though that contest had taken place in 2008, there were still persons referring to themselves as Portia supporters and Peter supporters. I cautioned him and I asked him if he really thought that a challenge at this time was the right thing. But he knows what he wants. He wants to lead the party. And
you make it sound like there's something wrong with that.
No, absolutely nothing. But one has to weigh it. When you're doing things, you have to weigh the consequences. You have to find the right balance. And you have to also, in your analysis, look behind you to see what the consequences have been. Peter Bunting is a shrewd man. He's a banker. He has experience of these things. He took a calculated risk. And when we take calculated risks, we have to stand by the consequences of those risks. What do I see as a member of the party? I see a party which is extremely fractured. But luckily, I would say that the perpetrators are not many. If you go on social media and you read the vitriolic posts, they come from the same set of persons.
But even
for the most part, except for one or two persons, the talk on the platform has been restrained. Certainly, I have not heard any complaints about any vitriol which has been spewed by the members of the one PNP Powerful Together team.
Well, even without what you might call as vitriol, though, some of the statements do seem to, as I said, go to the heart of whether or not the party will be able to come back together. Well, so you have Damian Crawford, for instance, suggesting that the Peter Bunting camp was, quote-unquote, selling lies in its release and interpretation of polling data in relation to Dr. Phillips' electability. And that, as I mentioned earlier, this vote buying accusation, again, goes to the heart of who Peter Bunting is, who his campaign is, who his campaign people are, and what they're doing. Well, let us be clear.
He started his campaign on a platform of integrity, and in my view, has strongly departed from it. Even with how he has made his statement today about basically that he's not going to abide by the rules, I think that lacks integrity. If you're a member of a political party and you have an agreement, you ought to honor it. If you disagree, then you should state that and fight for what you want. But you can't say, yes, I agree to these rules, and then because it is politically expedient to do so, you decide you're not following that. That is not integrity, and it is not leadership.
But
let's look further at what he says. He does not believe in democratic socialism. If you are a member of the People's National Party, and you read the Constitution, which was recently revised, you will see that one of the requirements to be a member is that you have to be over 18 and you have to embrace the precepts of democratic socialism. So I'm saying that, of course, political parties have to evolve. They have to transform. But what is the appropriate time for you to make your commentary and your input? This Constitution, we have discussed it ad nauseum before we actually promulgated the final draft. Why not? If you're a person of integrity and you're not simply pandering, why wouldn't you have made an input then?
Okay, so a couple of things before I run out of time. Everything you've said, though, I think goes back to my initial question, which is, doesn't all of this make it that more unlikely that on the morning of September 8th, we're going to see a smooth coming uniting of the party?
It is impossible to have a smooth uniting. You couldn't have a campaign like this. We have never had one which has not led to some fracture.
Are we
but
likely
because
to
the
see...
one PNP has a majority of the structure supporting that group, the majority of the councillors, the majority of the members of parliament, the majority of the caretakers, the majority, all regional leaders, the majority of the Senate, those who can declare. Because they have the support of the structures, it is more likely that the healing can take place when they win.
Except who is going to be on the outside, though? Because if you listen to the Rise United people, they say they're attracting the reform-minded people, they're attracting the younger people, they're attracting the people who are eager for change. So even with your comment about...
Let me just finish the question.
Even with your comment about democratic socialism, for a lot of people, you know, the mere phrase sounds 1970s, it sounds archaic, and it dates the party.
It is what Cortez and Sanders are speaking about in the United States. Because what it is about is social justice and equality. And Dr. Dayton Campbell, who will be joining you shortly, is a testimony to the policies which have been crafted by a democratic socialist government.
Yeah, but one of the concerns of your critics is that the party is stuck in the mud, it's stayed, it's not contemporary, and they say this is what Peter Bunting will bring. So your comment about him rejecting democratic socialism, rejecting rules, a lot of people see that as him trying to bring energy to the party.
No, because you cannot as a leader depart from rules that you establish. You cannot do that. That is not what leaders do. We have a very democratic internal process. He himself has been General Secretary of the party. He extols the virtues of Michael Manley. And this is a great departure. In other words, clearly, if he feels so strongly about this staidness and this backwardness of the People's National Party, he has an opportunity to have done something about it.
You don't think yourself, though, that the party has seemed staid and
not to me,
boring to a lot of outsiders and young potential voters and young people? I'm sure you've heard the criticisms.
I don't see it like that. Might be because I'm part of the process. People say, he says, that Dr. Peter Phillips has not done anything transformational. I have watched him steadily, methodically attract a slew of young, vibrant, talented candidates. He has done so without creating any disruption. I have seen him enter into a covenant with the people of Jamaica and take that document all over the island, meeting with our delegates to get their input.
And yet he's not gaining traction with the electorate.
You know, they predicted that P.J. Patterson would lose the election in 2001. Polls are a snapshot in time, and if used wisely, they will guide you as to some things that you have to fix. But I will ask you this. Part of why Comrade Bunting launched this challenge is because he said exactly what you are saying. Peter Phillips was at 12%, I think, when he raised it. He was at 3%. So a 3%er can revive and bring energy when he just barely made it he was like a footnote on the poll. There were many others ahead of him. If he was so concerned about the party's future, wouldn't he have supported one of those who was doing remarkably well in the poll?
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to leave my viewers to answer that because I'm going to wrap up this segment. Thank you so much. We'll be talking again, I know, and of course we'll be covering on Saturday. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and stay tuned when we come back. Dayton Campbell later on, our panelists will join us and weigh in, so stay tuned for all of that.
Political meeting Somebody look out them window pane and look on one of you and say, look on him, look on she run back of politics and he no live nowhere. I hear the mighty man step forward and say, I'm going to put something in place to take care of the stalwarts and the workers of this movement. And I say, comrades, hear the man, because this is the first time I'm hearing a party leader talking about the welfare of our members.